So let's go through the story line by line, step by step. And our primary task, our first challenge is obviously to understand the story well. What is happening, what are the details. We will see later that the maths part or the logic part of following the rules and making deduction is not going to be very challenging if I have understood the story well, because the story is quite text heavy, it's all in sentences. So first task will be definitely understand it well in your own terms in commonsensical simple numbers as such. So let's apply this process. Mathematicians are assigned a number called Erdo's number, named after the famous mathematician Paul Erdos. Only Paul Erdos himself has an Erdos number of 0. So there is a character called Paul Erdo. His own Erdo number is 0. Okay, very good. Any mathematician who has written a research paper with Erdos has an Erdos number of 1. So say there is a character called E and he has written a paper with Paul Erdos, his Erdos number is 1. So what does this Erdos number of 1 mean? If I stop and interpret right now, 1 means you have directly worked with Paul Erdo. The story continues and it says, for other mathematicians, the calculation of his or her Erdo numbers is illustrated below. And this is the heart of the matter, and the story is given in a fairly abstract language, so you have to work through it and understand it well. I am going through the whole detail, you don't need to do it, I can quickly explain the logic to you, but I also want to work on this process. How do I understand abstract details? Very simply by putting an example, by using specific information. You have learned this in reading skills also, there is general and specific. The idea is very general and mathematical and vague. If you put in numbers there, you will understand the process better. So suppose that a mathematician X has co-authored papers with several other mathematicians. So there is a mathematician named X, he has worked with a lot of other mathematicians. From among them, there is a particular mathematician called Y, and his Erdos number is the smallest. So let me put a small number there. Let me say his Erdos number is 3. And the story goes, in that case, let the Erdos number of Y be small y. So this is small y is 3. I'm putting a number here. Then X has an Erdos number of Y plus 1. So if I try to work out X's Erdos number, it will be 3 plus 1 or 4. This very simple, putting a number instead of the Y and Y plus 1, you will understand the process way better. And you will see that something like this was happening here also. When A worked with a character with Erdo number of 0, his Erdo number became 0 plus 1. Here also the same thing is happening, plus 1 is happening. So, okay, the same connection. Let me try and understand this process better now using this as well as this. So, say there is a character called B, he also directly works with Erdo. In that case, his Erdo's number also will be 1. But I will understand the process better if I say B never gets to work with Erdo directly, but B did work with A. Now I will use this logic. In this story, B is working with a mathematician A who has the lowest Erdo number, so far say in the story. And in that case, his Erdo number will become 1 plus 2 or Y plus 1, right? Now if I try and look at the number and the connections, I will see, okay, an Erdo number of 2 means that B is 2 connections away from Erdo himself. A was only 1 connection unit away from Erdo. If I look at B, you have to make 2 connections or 2 jumps to get to Erdo. Let me throw in another character C. Now say C works with B, C works with B and C works with A as well. In that case, what should be his Erdo's number? Again using that logic, remember X had worked with a lot of mathematicians. Out of those, the lowest plus 1 was X's new number. So C has worked with B and A, but A is the lowest, so C's Erdo number will be 1 plus 1 or 2 again. Because I'll take the lowest and add 1. So that was the whole crux of that middle paragraph story. Because just like B, C is also only 2 connections away from Erdo. But say if I remove C's connection or C's work with A and C only worked with B, in that case B is the lowest Erdo's number in C's story and 2 plus 1 C's new Erdo number would be 3. So I need to understand this process. This 3 now represents 1 connection, 2 connection, 3 connection, or you're 3 steps away from Erdo. So essentially somebody's Erdo number tells you how many connections away are you from him. So say if you get an Erdo number of 5, what does it mean? That you are 5 connections away from Erdo himself, right? Or the nearest person that you have worked with has an Erdo's number of 4. Because you worked with him, you have a Erdo's number of 5. So once you understand this process, the rest of the problem is going to be a usual simple math problem. But this was my first task or my first challenge. And now the problem really kicks off. It says, in a 7-day long mini conference organized in memory of Paul Erdos, a close group of 8 mathematicians, call them A, B, C, D, E, F, G and H, discuss some research problems. Very good. So very good. There are 8 mathematicians and their names are also given: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. At the beginning of the conference, A was the only participant who had an infinite Erdos number. So this infinity means that A has never worked with not only Erdos but anybody who has worked with Erdos. Not only that, he's not worked with the whole Erdos network at all. So I hope that made sense. And nobody had an Erdos number less than that of F. So F is the lowest out of all of these 8 guys. He has the lowest Erdos number. That means when everybody has, say everybody works with everybody, eventually everybody would have the Erdos number of F plus 1. So what does that mean to me? So say for example C, who is not the lowest, that means he must have an Erdos number higher than F. Again, you can put up a number and think in specific numbers. So say F is 5 and say C is 7. But if C and F work, C's new Erdos number will become 6. 5 plus 1, 6. That means anybody who plays with F eventually will get an Erdos number of F plus 1. So I need to understand that F is the lowest. And then some more information is given. On the 3rd day of the conference, F co-authored a pair jointly with A and C. F co-authored a pair jointly with A and C. Once this happens, I don't know what was the Erdos number earlier, but once he co-authors a paper with F directly, his new number will become F plus 1. The same thing will happen to A. His new Erdos number after working together with C and F will become F plus 1, because the lowest will be taken and 1 will be added, because now you have those many connections away from Erdos himself. So this was one piece of information given. Next it says, this reduced the average Erdos number of the group of mathematicians to 3. That means a sum. So the average for all the 8 is 3. That means the total must be 24. I'm using very basic averages. That means my new story tells me after this has happened, A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus F plus G plus H, this divided by 8 is equal to 3. So if I multiply this 8 here, that's what I was saying, the sum of all the numbers is going to be 24. I can further work with this equation keeping F as a kind of a reference or an anchor. If F is F, I know A is F plus 1. If F is F, I also know that C is also, let me put him up here, is also F plus 1. And maybe similarly I'll be able to figure out the rest of the information as I read the rest of the rules. Then it says the Erdos number of B, D, E, G and H remained unchanged with the writing of this paper. With the writing of this particular paper, B, D, E, G and H remained absolutely unchanged. So very good. That means they did not play with each other, or maybe they had the same Erdos number anyway, so no change happened in their story. Further it says, no other co-authorship among any 3 members would have reduced the average Erdos number of the group of 8 to as low as 3. So you know, because of this operation, because of A and C coming down to F plus 1, your average has become 3 or the sum has become 24. Earlier the sum must have been higher, because F is the lowest, that means C is definitely higher than F, maybe 1 point or 2 points or 3 points, I don't know. But because it has worked with F, it would come down to F plus 1. And therefore there is a loss or reduction in the overall sum, because whatever was the number earlier, it is coming down to F plus 1. Put up numbers and you will understand. Just as an example, say if F's Erdos number was 3 and C's Edo number was 7, C's new Edo's number would become 4. So there is a loss of overall 3. Or say C was 20, so and the new Edo number will still be 4, so there is a loss of 16, right? So because of this loss, the sum has reduced, and the story is essentially telling you that the loss is highest in this particular interaction. That means C must be higher than anybody else. Because if I say E is 34, say as an example, in this story E also would become 4 after working with F, and the loss would be so much more. There would be a loss of 30, and therefore the average would have reduced more than in this story, right? But it is saying the maximum average has reduced in this particular story. What that tells me essentially, using all of these numbers and stories, that C is the highest of all of these candidates. That's all. Because C would create the highest loss. A's loss can't be calculated anyway because he was always infinity, and any other story his contribution would remain always the same. But with the rest of the candidates who do have a number, I figure out from this statement that C is the highest. So in case my logic is not making sense to you, try and work with this story. What does this mean? That the average would not have come as low as to 3. That means it must have been higher than 3. That means the sum must have been higher than 24. That means the highest loss in the story is happening with the case of C interacting with F. That means C is the highest. So do figure that out for yourself, and then we can proceed further. So moving towards the next rule, it says at the end of the third day, 5 members of this group had identical Edo's number, while the other 3 had Edo's number distinct from each other. So 5 members had the same Edo's number, while the other 3 had distinct Edo's number. If I look at my story, C and A already have the identical Edo's number. That means that particular number which is identical for 5 people must be F plus 1. So I know in this story not only A and C are F plus 1, 3 other characters also have the value of F plus 1 only. Obviously F is not one of those characters because his Edo's number being lowest will remain F throughout the story. So another piece of information. Moving on the 5th day, E co-authored a paper with F which reduced the group's average Edo's number by 0.5. So on the 5th day, E has ended up working with F and it has reduced the average by 0.5. So this was very, very useful. For 8 people, the average has gone down by 0.5 or half. That means the overall loss in the story is that of 4. That essentially means that E earlier must have been F plus 5, whatever is Edo's number for F. She was F plus 5. After working with F, her new number would become F plus 1 and therefore a loss of 4. So try and understand this process, even if it did not make sense to you in the first go. E has worked with F and I understand there is an overall loss of 4. That means the sum has gone from 24 to 20 in the process. There is a loss of 4 simply because of this interaction. And what has happened because of this interaction? The new Edo's number has become F plus 1. There is a loss of 4. That means the earlier Edo's number must have been 4 higher than this. So I reversed the logic maybe, but get to this point that E's Edo's number before the conference or before he interacted with F was F plus 5. And then another piece of information was given. No other paper was written during the conference. So I also know that E did not play with anybody else. It was earlier F plus 5. And then after the 5th day interaction, this became F plus 1 and a loss of 4 for overall the whole group. So let me go back to that second point story, that the sum on the 3rd day after the interaction of A, C and F was 24. So A plus B plus C plus D plus E plus F plus G plus H is equal to 24. I know F is F. Instead of C, I can put a F plus 1. Instead of A also, I can put a F plus 1. Not only that, I know out of these people, 5 people have F plus 1. So overall, if I try to work out the sum, 5 into F plus 1. So 5 people are taken care of. F himself is still just going to be F. So now there are 6 people taken care of. You also know that you just figured out that E is going to be F plus 5. So instead of E, I am putting up a F plus 5. So overall 5 people, 6 people, 7 people taken care of, and finally you can put up a variable, say the 8th guy I still don't know, his value is x, and this sum is going to be 24. So I hope you captured the information. I'm going to reset it and put it all together. So finally what I have after all of this, so I hope you worked with that equation and finally you simplified it to 7f plus x is equal to 14. And that's it. Now you have come to this point. There is no further help available. There is no other equation. So you have to work and play with this and come up with a number or two that will work. If you work with the story, you will see only f equal to 1 and x equal to 7 works out in the story. There is no other possibility. As you keep going higher, you will figure out that x will have to become negative. But that can never happen because the Erdos number will be 0 or higher than 0 always. So it can't be negative. So the moment you make it 2, you say, and even if you try and make it 2, you say 7 2s are 14, this x will become 0. That means one of the guys is Erdos himself, but we know Paul Erdo himself is not there. So only this value works for you. So now you know that F's story in the beginning, his Erdos number must have been 1 because F comes out as 1. And once I know that, I also know E's Erdo number before the conference, it was F plus 5, that means it must have been 6. And moreover, I can also figure out that after C worked with F, his Erdos number must have been 2. After A worked with F, his Erdos number must have been 2. Also remember that F plus 1 after the third day was common to 5 people. But A and C came to this F plus 1 story only after the conference. That means A and C must have had some other Erdos number, not F plus 1 or not 2. So I also know there are 3 other people with the Erdo number of 2 and one guy has an Erdo number of 7. So I have a lot of information now and I can look towards the question now. The first question said the Erdos number of C at the end of the conference. At the end of the conference, C's Erdo number was 2. So option B. The next question, the Erdos number of E at the beginning of the conference. That also I can figure out fairly easily. I have already figured it out. It is 6. So it's going to be option C. How many participants had the same Erdos number at the beginning of the conference? After the third day, 5 people had the same Erdos number, including A and C. But A and C came down to 2 or that F plus 1 after the conference. That means before the conference, there were only 3 people which had the same Erdos number. Again, something that we have figured out earlier. So option B. So the next question is, the person having the largest Erdos number at the end of the conference must have had the Erdos number. And my answer is 7 fairly easily because I know this is the story after the third day. After the 5th day conference of E and F, E came down from 6 to 2. So, and anyway, even if I look at the value of 6, the value of 7 is higher. So whoever had the Erdos number of 7, this number did not change in the process this number did not change in the process, and at the end of the conference this was the highest number. Before the conference C was highest, but the moment he interacted with F, he got down to an Erdos number of 2. Or even if you look at your story, 5 people had an Erdos number of F plus 1, F himself was F, which was the lowest, E became F plus 1 after the conference, so the highest must be 7. The next question is probably the easiest of the lot. It says, how many participants in the conference did not change their Erdos number during the conference? A definitely changed his Erdos number. He went from infinity to 2 or F plus 1. C also changed her Erdos number because she was the highest earlier and then she came down to 2. I know E went down from 6 to F plus 1. That means E is also in that category. If I look in this story, because these were the only conferences that happened, the co-authoring of papers, and therefore these are the only change of Erdos number. So out of 8 people, 3 people experience a change in Erdos number. F will not experience that at all because F is already the lowest. F's number would change only if F interacts or co-authors a paper with somebody whose Erdos number is lower than himself, which anyway is not possible unless the person is Paul Erdo, which anyway is not possible because he's already at 1. So F's number is not changing, 3 people are changing. How many people are not changing? 5 people are not changing at all. So my answer would be option D. And that's it, we are pretty much done with the set. Once again, you will notice it's a top heavy set. That means you have to do a lot of work in the beginning. But the moment you come to the questions, if you figure out some part of the story, you will see the questions can be done very, very quickly. Again, a lot of things are happening. It is very text heavy. So first challenge is to be good at reading and translate the story. Then there are some general DILR kind of rules given, and there is a little bit of algebra at the end. So much is happening, and even after figuring a lot out, you still have a lot of missing data, and a lot of people get stuck or very distressed there that I don't have the full table. We have seen enough examples where we don't have the full data. When I look at the question is often ridiculously easy. I did not even need the full data. So just because you don't have the whole picture in the beginning, don't get discouraged. Perhaps the question is about those very basic details that you have figured out. So maybe not the whole thing, maybe one or two questions at least you can do, and quickly also. So keep at the process. Obviously, confidence and persistence, concentration. If you're scared of this subject already, all of this is going to be very French and Arabian to you. This will not make sense. But if you go step by step, if you put in the effort to notice it step by step, you will see none of the steps was very, very big or beyond your grasp. So it was only a matter of you trying it out initially with a lot of help and lot of support, and then keeping at it and finally mastering the process. So this is it for this session. See you really soon.